Welcome to episode 16 of Chinwag Nation. Steven, I don't know if you know this or not, but I think we have like some fans or something. I don't know. I
Do we
was
have?
at a conference this last week and people walked up to me. They're like, "Hey, I've checked out your podcast. It's pretty good, man." I'm like, "All right, thanks. Keep watching." I don't see you on there, but that means that must mean you're watching after the fact. But yeah, we're so excited for those that are going to be watching after or joining us now, spending time with us. This is episode 16. We're talking about leadership by design. Before we get into it, just a few things. We have a vision to inspire lasting leadership communities. We're on a mission to do the hard stuff together. What does that mean? And how can you help us? Number one, build community with us. Wherever you go, if you know leaders in your space, your sphere of influence, or you know people around you that are leaders, that are new or experienced, like build community. I think that's the biggest way you can help us. That's one of the things that we're hoping to do and trying to build out. The second thing is if you know somebody that's struggling in the leadership space, connect them with us. We'd love to help them. We'd love to talk with them and also just help them build community. As I said, we're on a mission to do the hard stuff together. As leaders, we shouldn't have to do it alone. And I think a lot of the times it's really like almost automatic. Like I've got to figure this out on my own, right? I have to do this on my own. I need to go through this, and I've got to make it through. When in actuality, there's a lot of power in we, and there's a lot of power in building community. And then the third one, because this is, social media, like, repost, share, all that stuff matters. Comments, ask questions of us. We love that. We really want this to be engaging. And hello, my beautiful wife. Johanna's one of our regulars. My wife is on, so it's good to see you. And then, again, just connect with us, build community. That's super important to us. These are our opinions. They're not reflective of past, current, future organizations that we might associate with. This is just us having a good chin wag every week. A couple of things on the housekeeping side as well. Over the next couple of weeks, we will be taking a brief pause. We've got some birthdays in our families and stuff like that we want to make sure that we're giving them time to. So we will be off uh, putting our family first and building community there, which is also really, really important. Um, so why leadership by design? So funny story. I don't know funny, but let's see. I want to say it was 12 years ago, maybe 10 years ago. It was a while ago. I was applying for a job at an organization. It was a product manager job. And it was like a screening interview, and I was meeting with the hiring manager at the time, and he talked about this idea of like divergence and convergence and design. And I'm like, oh, what is this? Divergence, convergence. These are really fancy words. And then I'm like, oh, that means to like brainstorm and then narrow down, right? So you diverge, you consider all possibilities, and then you use whatever information you have available to you to like narrow down to focus on the most important thing. Like, and I'm like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. Like, because that way, like, if you don't want to do everything, right? And I think this pairs well with the idea of design, which was also part of that screening interview. And I went online. I'm like, diverge, converge, design. Really trying to kind of figure out, is that even like a thing? I went online. Like, and is it like something like an older person says, Stephen? Go
Well,
to
I
the
mean,
web. Maybe if I said I went on AOL or something, that would like really
I,
date me.
I personally felt like I knew exactly what you were talking about.
Okay,
So
cool. All
if
right,
you're
good,
feeling
good.
aged,
All
then
right.
it's probably
I don't know.
me
There's like
too.
this thing 6'7" now that my teenage son's been throwing around. I don't even know what that. I had
It's
to
funny.
ask.
I just looked that up
Yeah,
like
oh, yeah.
15 minutes before this call because my
Okay.
teenage daughter sent me the
I
same
had to
thing.
ask the kid in Zoomies the other day. I'm like, what does this mean? So I can like like have a conversation and like know what I'm talking about. But anyway, I diverged. You see,
Very,
I like to play on
yeah,
words. I
very
did.
sick of you.
But let me get back to it. So I looked it up and I found this book by Don Norman. It's called The Design of Everyday Things. And it's a great book. If you're like very interested in design at all, it doesn't even matter if it's product design, leader design, culture design. if you're just interested in the idea of design, it's like it's fundamental. And he talks about these three ways of these three types of experience that people go through when they experience a design, any design: sitting in a chair, sleeping in a bed, driving in a car, it, right, eating food in a restaurant. There's the visceral experience, right? So like the gut reaction. So like if you walk, this is probably too visceral of an example, but if you walk into a dirty bathroom, right? What nobody wants. Yes, Becky, kids are all over the 6'7", but if you walk into a dirty bathroom, it's like your visceral experience, right? That the design of their bathroom experience is definitely, most people will say it didn't hit the mark. So visceral gut reaction. The second is behavioral, right? And so this is like um, how we react and how we engage and act based off of our past experiences, right? And our belief systems, the things that kind of drive us. And then the last one is reflective, and that's where we're like stopping, we're pausing, and we're thinking. And here's the thing about reflective. And I got into this for a really long period of time in terms of the brain science, the way people think. People don't automatically like choose to be reflective, and that's the crit. And Don Norman calls this out as well. You actually have to you have to deliberately, if you want to have a complete design, right? You consider all three: visceral, behavioral, and reflective. But in order to get to that reflective plane where we like stop and think and look at the thing that we're actually engaging with, you actually have to schedule that time. You actually need to make a deliberate effort to do that because our brains don't want to. In fact, our brains don't want to think at all. And that's how you know, right? If you have good design, if people engage with it and right, they don't have to work for it. It just
Hmm.
feels good immediately. And so we'll dig into each one of these and we'll just talk about, I think, two key concepts that I think are connected to this that are relevant in the leadership world today. And that's one is iteration. I'm sure anybody who's listening to this or who's in the business world has heard the word, at least in the last month, the word iterate, right? That's iterate forward. And the other is experiment. And so when you hear the word iterate, Stephen, like what comes to mind for you, especially with respect to design and leadership
Yeah,
design?
for sure. And I mean, I haven't read this book, although you've piqued my curiosity on it. And so I'm going to be learning along the way here, right? But I know that there's iterate, and then you mentioned experiment, and I think iterate implies using a base in which there's something known, right?
Hmm.
And then you
Okay.
are building off of that repeatedly to get some type of different desired result. Um, if not, right? Isn't that the definition of insanity? Just trying the same thing over and over
Yeah,
again.
I think so. I think it is. Well, and I think so is engaging with the same poor design over and over again, hoping the design will get better.
That's fair. I've been a part of that a couple of times in my day.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, for me, I think iterate. Sometimes we call it like a phased process too.
Sure.
Uh,
Things that
but
build upon each other.
exactly, you kind of know what your minimum viable product is going to be, and then you kind of build upon that and enhance it and collect feedback along the way and reprioritize. But you're building off of that same base, right?
Yeah. Well,
Whereas experiment's a little bit different.
I mean, for us, what we're trying to do here, especially with third place leadership, right, is we're really trying to make leadership and the concepts within leadership approachable. And when you think about these three areas of design, right, visceral, behavioral, reflective, for some folks, it can be really overwhelming. And I think for good design, especially if you're a leader of people, start with something. And to Stephen's point, take feedback, take information, and try to make it a little bit better. In the design world, they call that, right, prototyping. Right,
Yeah.
you start with I think you called it out. You start with the base. You start with the basic thing, and you build that forward. And here's the thing: when these three areas, at least the first two, visceral and behavioral, um, the first one, you can quickly see if it's a good design or not, right? So say you're thinking about designing a meeting, you're brand new to a role, and you're like, okay, here's the perfect agenda for me. This is how I'm going to structure it. I'm going to have an icebreaker. I'm going to get into the content, and then I'm going to end it. Um, and so you kick off your meeting, you get into it, and it's just like crickets, right? It's just silent. You get no feedback. You get no engagement at the end. You're going to have to ask yourself, like, well, first off, you have the visceral information. Chances are when you design the agenda, you didn't have the behavioral, right? Especially if you're new to a role, you're just getting to know these folks. Maybe they've seen this play over and over again, and they're like, "Oh, we know how this is going to turn out," right? And so the most important thing, and I think this is where you can shift behavior, right? You take time to reflect, and I think at the very end, as long as you're making sure that you're being reflective, like, hey, why didn't this work? I noticed like there wasn't a lot of engagement. You can get to better design, and you can iterate forward. um and I think the iterate, I think, is a little bit more methodical and predictable, right? It's more safe, I think, because you're using information. And I think there's the other side of design, which is experiment, which I think is from my perspective is taking a leap without all the info. And I'm curious what your thoughts are on that, Steve.
Yeah, I mean, because it can seem like a fine line, right? That distinguishes iteration from experimentation. But I think iteration is sort of enhancing or building upon what you know, where experimenting is testing what you don't.
Yeah,
And
exactly. I
I think
think
with
I think both are vital in design,
oh, totally,
right? Especially
totally,
especially leadership design.
yeah. I mean, every once in a while, you might get it right the first time, right, and just hit that home run. But for the most part, things are always expanding and enhancing. But experimentation, I think that's where you take a concept and you create a hypothesis, right? I don't know if this is how it's traditionally done in design, but you're going to speculate that if you're going to take a business case or a prototype, that it's going to produce some type of result, right? It's either going to
Yeah,
help my team out in this way, it's going to help people out in this way, it's going to save this type of person X number of hours, or whatever it may be. But you're not going to know until you build it. And so you can do a bunch of brainstorming ahead of time before you start. Make sure you're on that right path for that minimum viable product, but you're ultimately not going to know until you build it. And you're going
yeah,
to
it's true.
either accept or not accept that hypothesis by the time it's all said and done. And then you get into iteration.
I for some reason while you were talking through that, I couldn't help but think about your pies. And if you've been following us for
Here we go.
a while ago, I brought up Steven's pies. And he still hasn't. I just want to make sure everybody knows this. He still hasn't made me one. But I will say they were designed well. I will say your pies were designed well, and I think that was actually a really key component of your design as a leader when you led people, Stephen. And that is you took the time to you understood the power of service in relation to food. I know that sounds kind of like non-traditional as it relates to the workplace, but I think um, there's a lot in the pie that you gave to people, and a lot in the design of how you led and why you gave pies. And I don't know if you want to break that down at all for folks in terms of why you did it, but little things like that, I think, are part of the design, especially for leaders, right? Whether it's bringing something to them or giving something to your folks. But I mean, why did you make pies, Stephen? And what was it? What was that for you? And did
Yeah,
you
I
find
mean,
yourself experimenting?
well, there's always that first time, right, where you bring in some type of baked goods and you're like, are they actually going to like this and eat it? And is it going to be worth the effort?
That's
Right.
true.
Um, because there has been times where I've been a part of a meeting and I've brought some sweets and there's lots left over because people are either health conscious or um, might be allergic to something, whatever. But for me, man, like just baked goods, cooking in general has just always been a love language for me. As
Mm.
somebody who's like, I guess the best way to describe this is anytime we host, right? And my wife
Mm.
and I love to host. I am such an introvert that it doesn't mean that I don't love and appreciate people. I love being able to serve people, like have them come to my home, sit around the table, cook them a good meal. But at the same time, I can wash dishes and do all these other chores where I can sort of control the amount of communication I have to have with people at any given time. But
You can go wash a few dishes and come back.
exactly, right? I can kind of pace myself.
Yeah.
But to me, cooking has always been a love language. One, there's a level of effort, right, in anything that you make when you're cooking, and I think people will always sort of appreciate that effort. The second is that there's a level of vulnerability in putting something out there that you created, right? It was a
Sure.
concoction of all these different raw ingredients, and now it's in front of somebody, and they can either love it or hate it. And then the third is I am not the most artistic person in the world, and cooking has been one of my few creative outlets. So I've always sort of expressed myself through my cooking, put myself out there, and um, what I really like to do is actually ask people ahead of time, like some of their own nostalgic memories of what it is that they like to eat, or a dessert that they remember, and then try my best to replicate that or bring them something that creates, to your point, right, some type of visceral reaction, nostalgia. And yeah, man, it's just for me, it's an easy way to take some of my effort, put that back into people. And so
I
it doesn't matter if it's a pie or a cake or cookies or whatever, right?
No, I love that. I was taking notes because you touched on I think some really important things to consider when you're designing, right? For when you're designing as a leader. And Becky, we see your note in chat. We'll talk about that next. A couple of things we can't reply on here to LinkedIn. There's no two-way with LinkedIn. The second thing is your comments come in um, when you see us speaking, and I think there's like at least a 2 minute delay or something like that, or if there's enough of a delay so that way I think it might have to do with latency. I'm not sure, but I love your example, Stephen, for a few reasons. The last point that you made, one, because it connects to what we're talking about tonight.
Yeah.
The last thing you mentioned, and that's you understanding that as part of your design for cooking for folks, you consider the visceral, right? You consider the how people are going to feel about that, and you take that and you incorporate that into your design. I've seen you do that in a variety of areas. Actually, not just with pie making, but I've seen you with the gifts that you give, with the spaces that you create for folks. You take into account like that personal, aspect of things. The second thing is when you're considering design as a leader, you have to consider design for yourself too, right? Because if it feels like if the design doesn't feel good for you to enter into, whether it's a meeting space or a project you're working on, that's going to show up too, and that's going to have an impact. So I think it's really important to consider yourself as part of the design, then as part of kind of the negotiation with you and your team in terms of what gets pulled forward and what doesn't, as far as how you're going to go about work and maybe even how you're going to build the culture together, because it does take everybody, right, to build culture. But the last thing, and this is one of the first things you mentioned, is the power of hosting. And if you think about like a business that you've been to, or a restaurant that you've been to, or any business that you love frequenting, chances are they're really good at hosting, right? You feel like a revered guest in their space. And let's just be real here for a second. as leaders, we don't always have the time, right? And extra tons of time to do everything perfectly. But I think if you sit in a space of hosting people, uh, right, and just making people feel like a revered guest, like somebody that you want in their space, that you in your space, that you want, right, to connect with and build community with, I think that can have a tremendous impact on, right, the design of your leadership space and the design of the organization that you're a part of or engage with. So those were three things that really kind of stood out to me in your example. I just wanted to poke fun at you for still not making me a pie, because I really enjoy your pies, Stephen. They're designed well. But I want to come back to uh, Becky's comment here in chat. She said, I think it's huge feedback as well if attendance starts to drop off over time for a reoccurring meeting. People need to feel that their time spent is valuable. So it's good to think of knowing the audience, um, to think what would make people walk away thinking that meeting was so valuable for me.
Yeah. The Witham.
And pies also
Witham.
show a lot of effort.
Yeah.
But I think to Becky's point, right? Like, um, if it's poor design, I don't want to get your thoughts here as well, Steven, but it's poor design for anything if people stop using it in general.
Yeah.
Right, if you go to an airport and everybody's standing but there's like 30 seats open, right, that's gonna say a lot. And to Becky's point, um if you hold a regular session and all of a sudden, you start with 15 and then you have two people in there, by the time you're done, you might want to reconsider your design and maybe sit in some reflective reflective space, or consider the behavior of the organization, or you know all those different like aspects of design. But I'm curious what you think.
Yeah, for sure. I also just noticed that your wife said that you've got a bountiful crop of apples. Um, you
Yes.
know, you know,
Yes.
might,
We have
might
apples
be,
and pears. So
might be
yeah.
an apple pie in your future. I love pears. Also, just to the rest of the world, I want them to know that pies do take a lot of effort, but I put more effort into my friendship with Brian than it takes to make a pie. So we could always
Wait a
adjust
second.
we could adjust the knobs a bit if we need
and
to. If you
and
want.
I like, there's so much to read into Becky's,
I know that's right.
comment as
Now I'm
well.
jumping to that, but I just had to clear my name there. Yeah, I mean, I've been a part of this. In fact, I've been guilty of this on both sides. Right? You can have a meeting with a large number of people, and you schedule it, and the first one's got this giant push by an executive sponsor. You've got 60 people in there, and then that sponsorship wanes as things get busier, and you've got this as a reoccurring monthly meeting, right? And you see your 60 people go down to 55, and then to 40, and then to 20, and then it's just over time you're realizing like the value of these meetings aren't necessarily reaching the audience. It's I think it's really important to consider um, how many people you have in a meeting at any given time and what the purpose of that meeting is. Right. The only time that I want to have a large number of people in a meeting is if I'm conveying, hopefully, a mass amount of useful baselining information, right? Could be a training,
Sure.
could be something else. But the likelihood of me asking to bring in a bunch of people in a reoccurring type fashion is pretty low. And the reason is that if I am having a reoccurring meeting, then chances are there's an element of iteration in that in and of itself, right? There's going to be discussions, there's going to be brainstorming, there's going to be action items, there's going to be this sort of back and forth. And if you have a large group of people, chances are for the vast majority of the individuals in that room, that meeting's not going to be very helpful, right?
Well,
Smaller meetings are more productive in that way.
there's got to be a tolerance for
Yeah.
iteration and
Yeah.
experimentation too, from all involved, right? From your bosses to the people, your people that you work with. Like, there has to be a tolerance there
Yeah,
to try things out and experiment,
for sure.
without getting super frustrated if the design is poor, right? There has to be some, I think, some tolerance and some grace in that space too.
And
But I think
please also realize that it's okay to realize after you've experimented and this isn't working that it's okay to call it.
yes,
You don't have to keep
absolutely.
going, right? Like,
Absolutely. I think Becky's point, like, hey, if this
yeah,
isn't working, don't keep doing
yeah.
it.
Please stop.
The absence the absence of people should tell you a lot. And I think it really reinforces the third aspect of Don Norman's right three tiers of experience, and that's taking some time to reflect. Right, in the agile world, that there's a reason why they do retrospectives. In the project world, there's a reason why they do lessons learned. And we could do a whole nother conversation about sustainment, right? It's one thing to capture those things. It's another thing to do something with them. And I think it's where the idea of like diverging and converging comes into play. Like you could come up with 1,000 things to make the design better, but what's going to have the most power and impact, and what's the most important to start with first? And I'm gonna drop a bomb here as we kind of move towards the
Oh man.
closing. I don't know if it's a bomb. I mean, I don't know. You know me, Steven. I can get on. I can get bombastic. Oh, oh, I heard a word. I heard a word. Uh, and my intent is not to be dastardly, but but um, I will go as far as saying, if you don't, with just project work in general, just the design of a project, I would go as far as saying, if you don't take these three things into mind, right, the visceral, the behavioral, and the reflective things in mind, you're going to have a hard time running a successful project and body of work. And
Yep.
I'm curious your thoughts. I mean, and I think about the people here, right? Like if they've been through something before, or if they don't even know how to engage or interact, right, with the project that you're about to roll out. But
Yeah, I think there's two things to think about, right? There's the consideration of those three buckets of things as you go into planning, and then there's also the listening to those things as they're actually happening as a form of feedback.
okay, let's start with the first one, and then let's dig into the second one as part of
Right.
our as we
Like,
wrap up.
I mean, you can plan for what you think is going to be the best rollout of a product or a design or a process, right? You can consider all the different portfolios of people, profiles, if you will, that are going to be a part of that
Mhm.
design. You can be thinking, oh, they'll like this, but they won't like this, or we've tried that in the past, and this is what happened, right? So
I mean,
you know,
there's tools like the
yeah,
stakeholder
yep,
management. Oh, I'm
yep,
sorry, partner
right,
management, right? I mean, there's tools that contribute to good design, right?
yep. And then there's the actual implementation of that,
Which
because
is the
also,
second, which is the second part.
right. So like now you're rolling it out. Are you actually collecting that data from people's reactions,
Mhm,
behaviors,
sure.
reflections, right?
Yeah.
Which
Well,
could
and
lead to stronger
have you
right.
created the space for them to share it with you as well?
Yeah. Because all too often, right, you get a project plan, you get a rollout date, and you just keep steamrolling. Um, but
Yeah.
it can take away from the iteration and ultimately a much better product and a much more efficient development cycle.
Yeah. What do you mean by that? For the people for the people who don't
I
speak,
mean, yeah,
for the people who
so
don't
I mean,
speak.
I could guess 40 times to get it right, or I could listen to people and iterate, two or three times and finally land in the same spot.
Okay, so say that one more time. I could
So,
guess 40 times
right, without any feedback, right? Just
without
not
any
taking data.
feedback,
Or I
or
can
you could
spend the
iterate
time,
twice.
yeah, and get there.
I, I think that's the quote for tonight. If you're just joining us now, or if you're, hopefully you've made it to the end. Hopefully we've been interesting enough tonight that you've made it to the end of our podcast. Um, and I'm gonna try my best to repeat, Stephen, here. With respect to the design of a project, any project you're running, it's better to iterate a couple of times, taking feedback and doing something with it, than guessing 40 times.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. And I think that's a scalable idea with this whole subject. Whether you're a new leader, right? Or an experienced leader running an entire organization, running a division, running a small team, running a project, uh, taking this concept of good design, whether it's understanding the visceral, impact, the behavioral impact for taking time to reflect. It's better to iterate twice than to guess, right, 40 times. I mean, and this gets into like the whole idea of rework and waste and all those things, right, as it relates to project work.
For sure, man.
Yeah, I got really excited about this subject, right, and for a few reasons. I think uh, as we try to lead, right, and engage in an ever changing landscape, right, that is the workforce today. I think design is more important than ever, and good design. And taking in these concepts of feedback and iteration and experimentation and really settling there as a foundation versus trying to guess 40 times with bits and pieces of information. I think it's fundamental right now, especially when you think about change and the pace of change, which we've talked about in our last session. Um, but I think if you're looking at you know design in general or leadership in general, this is some really good content for you to just kind of chew on and think about in your own journey.
On a less serious note, I thought I would bombard you with a little bit of information. I
Okay.
wouldn't I wouldn't say this is me being dastardly though. Um,
Yeah, I got that from the kid from Zoomies when I asked him about 6'7". I'm like, what's the origin of 6'7"? And he's like, it came from some dastardly rap song. I'm like, I'm gonna try to use that word at some point this week. He's
it's a good
like,
word.
yeah. He's like, I try to mix in new vocabulary words. I'm like, that's a great word.
I,
It's a
I was
very,
wondering. I
it's a
was like, I
very,
don't think you
it's a,
use the term bombastic, which I don't even know if that's a real word. It probably
it is a
is.
real word. I think
And
it is.
then dastardly, all in the same. I
Yeah, dastardly is they're both they both elicit some visceral. So that
They
was
are. They
that
are.
was impromptu design, and I'm
That was good.
hoping you'll give me feedback so I can iterate forward. Steve.
Well, I came to this podcast today with a dad joke for you.
Yes.
And it kind of fits because we were talking about pies earlier. But how do you know that a clock really likes the dessert you provided it?
7, 8, 9.
It goes back 4 seconds.
Oh,
Hmm. Just for you, buddy.
thank you.
Yeah. And if you're feeling pain right now, I just want you to now understand the visceral reaction I have when you touch
Well,
it.
hold on a second. I I think I think this goes back to Becky's example. I had an absence of a visceral response.
Oh, God. Yeah, I
Uh,
can't even remember
I,
where I heard that the other day, but I was like, oh, I'll
uh,
save that for Brian.
I'm sorry. I'm trying to read Becky's comment, but it's oh, okay.
Well, now it's a banner.
I love the idea that leadership by design means having intentionality around creating a great experience for the people you are leading, which has a direct impact on driving great results. Yeah, that's a great point, Becky. I didn't even know we could like post them up there, so now I can read it without like trying to go back and forth. Um, no, that's a great point, Becky, because we didn't really even get into how good design can drive performance. And that gets into the whole system, right? The whole system of performance management and strategy, and how I think you alluded to this, Stephen, when you mentioned the idea that it's one thing to write something down on paper, it's another thing to implement it,
Yeah.
right? It's one thing to have a great plan, it's another thing to take the steps that you need to take to implement it. I think this connects really well to what Becky just shared, in that like you can have a great strategic plan, a great strategy, right? You can even have a really great performance management system. But if your design within those doesn't consider the people that have to interact with both,
Yeah.
and
It,
really the behaviors that you're hoping to get out of, the results that you're hoping to get out of that, right? Then you're missing a piece of the puzzle, right? Again, good strategic plan. You spend hours and hours, great performance management system, all the bells and whistles and KPIs and dashboards. But if it's not designed right for the people, then you're going to probably have behaviors that you never intended to have that result, right? People maybe cutting corners to get to their targets, right? As an example, which is a thing. Right? I don't just say that to like, it's a thing, it happens. Um, and also, maybe a plan or a set of values or whatever. Right? We've seen this story play out, right? That just becomes really great words on a wall, but doesn't really get
for
fully
sure.
implemented. And I think design and good design and considering people that have to engage with that design is vital. And it's a key premise, right, for what we're talking about tonight and what we're hoping to engage in tonight. So great point, Becky. I love that.
It, it actually makes me think. I know it's a little roundabout here, but I had this thought initially, Brian, when you were doing your new intro, and
Yeah.
then kind of all this sort of plays into this
People
as well.
people weren't supposed to know that was a new intro.
Well, all of our fans have been here for all 16 episodes, I'm sure,
Okay,
Brian. They would
that's
know if it's changed. Um,
uh
at least your wife will know it's new.
that's
Uh,
true. And Axel, my
and
son.
Axel, yeah, Axel drops it from time to time. But something we should probably talk about, I don't even know how we frame this, is what is a healthy community
Mm,
versus an unhealthy community.
sure.
That might be a little tricky um, to talk about, but
Mhm.
a very very similar thing. Like a lot of communities are designed a particular way, and
Mm,
when we talk about community and getting plugged into a community, right? What does that actually mean? You know,
yeah.
what is that community built for? Um,
Yeah, I think we should break that down, and when we come back in a couple of weeks. And I think a few things come to mind for healthy versus unhealthy, right?
for
I think
sure.
that would be really be important to dig into. Love that. All right. Well, hey, we're getting close to wrapping up. If there are any last minute thoughts or questions, we'd love to. We typically hang out for a minute and see what comes through. We'd love your questions. We'd love your thoughts. Thank you for engaging with us tonight and spending time with us. If you watch this after the fact, um, please reach out to us. We'd love your questions. We'd love your engagement. Again, we have a vision to inspire lasting leadership communities. We're on a mission to do the hard stuff together. Nobody should have to do leadership alone. And if you are, please reach out to us. We'd love to talk with you. How you can help us build community. You can do that in your own sphere of influence, or you can bring them here to chat with us or spend time with us. The second thing is if you know somebody that's struggling, again, send them our way. And then last, repost, share, like, comment. I mean, all those things matter. We're not like, I'm not heavy into the analytics or anything like that, but it does help get folks to engage with us, and it helps us achieve our mission and our vision. And so, again, thanks for spending time with us now or later, and wishing you all a great week ahead. Steve, any
Thank you.
closing thoughts?
No, I think that was well said, Brian. Just appreciate
Yeah.
the engagement. Becky, Edna, Joe. If any of you have topics that are near and dear to your heart as well that you'd like us to bring up, just send us a message.
And if you had a visceral response to Steven's joke, it's okay. I will be sharing the next one. Please come back.
Great. Well, they can be reassured that it's not going to be another one from me.
Okay.